Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new expanded deck profile video. Today we're going to be talking about a weird Regigigas variant that I came up with while playing the expanded ladder, and this comes from my experience of trying to make this Moltres work. Obviously I've shown you guys a video on this Moltres before, I've shown you guys a video on Regigigas before, but what if we combined them? Before the Pokemon Go set came out and gave us the combo with Blastoise and Charizard, unfortunately, there wasn't just a lot of good ways to power up this Moltres. It's a very expensive mill card to use, and it's usually getting knocked out. So a way that I thought to do this is to do it with Regigigas. Obviously, I said this before Pogo. I tried to do it with like Embor from Black and White, where it just accelerates as much energy as you like. Didn't work. Tried to do it with like all sorts of, Blacksmith. Well, they're not good enough. But ironically, I found some success with the Regigigas variant, so I wanted to share the results. I'm not the only person to come up with this idea. I did see someone a couple days after I made this list playing with a Moltres Regigigas deck, just when testing the capabilities of Regigigas and expanded. You're going to see, first of all, that this looks a lot like my other Regigigas list in the counts I use. There's some changed counts, but if you saw my other Regigigas list, it's generally the same idea. This Moltres is the build around. HP hardly matters, you're always going to be getting one shot by the time this comes to the active. What does matter is top burner. Discard all fire energy from this Pokemon, then discard a top card from the top of your opponent's deck with each energy you discarded in this way. So theoretically, we're going to aim to get at least 6 mills with every top burner, being a more efficient Durant mill in that way, though obviously a lot more awkward. The second attack is actually pretty good too. You wouldn't think that we would ever use this in a mill deck. You'd be surprised. 3 fire, 1 colorless fire spin for 180, discard 3 energy from this Pokemon. Obviously the discarding is hardly relevant because you're a Regigigas deck, so you just get stuff back. But here's my favorite thing about this deck. Sometimes you just can't mill your opponent. Sometimes your opponent just has like everything they need. Sorry, just reorganizing because it bothers me a little the way things are organized because I didn't take time to do this before the video. It doesn't matter sometimes, like, what you do. Your opponent's just going to have a deck and, like, just get set up without playing many cards, and you're just not going to be able to mill them. Or if they just, like, immediately have, like, a stronghold on your board. But what's great about this deck is that, worst case scenario, I can't mill them. It doesn't just lose like decks like Durant mill, because it can go ahead and play a jank Regigigas deck in the fashion. Regigigas, obviously, with its Ancient Wisdom ability, if you have Regirock, Ice, Steel, Eleki, and Drago in play, you may attach up to 3 energy cards from your pile to one of your Pokemon. And it has the Gigaton Break attack 150 and does 150 more if your opponent is a V max. So, obviously, everyone knows the Regigigas deck. It's great in Standard right now, but in Expanded, we can have more bench spots, so that's why we take advantage of this combo with the Moltres. But like I said, even if this deck, you can't mill your opponent, you're just like, well, my opponent's getting too good. 4 energy 180 is not bad. The Regigigas pieces all have good attacks. It's not as good as a typical Regigigas deck because you're taking away a lot of your consistency regarding these pieces. However, it's still pretty good. So there's been a lot of games where I've won just by KOing 2 like VMAXs, just because my opponent got the setup on me. I wasn't able to mill them fast enough, so I just KO 2 VMAXs and win. So quite good. This is the Regice we play. Absolutely the correct Regice with the Icy Barrier ability. As long as you're active, your opponent can't play any Stadium cards from their hand. Icy Wind is potentially usable as well, so we'll talk about it. 1 water, 2 colorless, 60, and your opponent's active is now asleep. If you can potentially trap something for a turn with this, it's pretty good. Don't want to use this too often though, unless you're taking KO with it. Putting this active means your opponent can't play things like Silent Lap or Chaotic Swell, which we don't want to see in play. Obviously, we want our abilities. 2 copies of Regidrago here with the Dragon's Horde ability. If it's in the active, you may draw cards until you have 4 cards in your hand. You may not use more than 1 Dragon Horde ability each turn. Now you'll see I played 1 copy of all the other Regis. A lot of decks that you'll see that are Regi combo decks and expanded will only play 1 of all the pieces. I disagree with this. These decks prize too many pieces, have trouble getting them, and you don't want that. So what I went and did is we played 2 of the most important pieces, Regis being the thing you want in the active most of the time if you're not milling, and Regidrago being the thing you want in the active most of the time because it can draw cards. So we played 2 of those because those are the most important pieces, and we played 1 of the less important pieces in this specific deck. Regieleki is a great card, we don't use it as much in this deck. Speaking of Regieleki, Static Shock for 20, and Terra Spark does 2 lightning, 1 colorless, 120, discard all lightning, and does 40 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. I'll talk about the same combo I did when I talked about Regieleki in the Regigigas video I did before, is that if you attach 2 Auroras and a counter that wouldn't count as that, you essentially want to get like a DCE, but this deck doesn't have DC, so you want to have 2 so you can retreat it afterward. So if you can get 4 energy on here, discard the 2 Auroras, and then not discard the other 2, which would have to be inactive counter energies in this case, then you can have a retreat pivot ready as well for next turn. Keep that in mind, because you may want to pivot into a different attacker. There's another Regieleki that's actually wouldn't be bad here. I wouldn't advocate for this ever in a regular expanded Regigigas deck. However, in this deck specifically, because we're setting up a combo, it does have the 1 energy electromagnetic sonar. Put a trainer from your Scrabble into your hand, which can get back our Sky Fields or our Counter Catchers, which could be good. Also has the 2 lightning, 1 colorless, discard 2 lightning, does 120 snipe. Not terrible, not that useful in these decks. The other Regieleki's better in general Regigigas decks. If you want to play this though, in this specific deck, I think it's actually not a bad idea because of that electromagnetic sonar. I just like this Regieleki a lot more. It's my personal preference. Like I said though, if you want to play this one, 130 HP as well, I guess that's a benefit. It's got 3 retreat though, which is terrible. I hate that part. Regirock here also has 130 HP, and this is Giga Impact, 2 fighting, 1 colorless, 140 during your next turn. This Pokemon can't attack. It's not surviving a hit anyway. It hits weakness on Arceus. Regigate, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, put it onto your bench, so shuffle your deck. A lot of people who play these Regi decks who are in the higher echelon of players, I will say, because you just get some standard players here that just play this because it's standard, and then you get some like bad players that will play like stuff like this Regirock or this Regirock. These ones are just not good choices at all. I mean, maybe the Hammer would be kind of funny in this deck. Don't do that. That is terrible. The other Regirock that people always talk about is this Regirock right here with the Omega Barrier. Whenever your opponent plays a trainer card, excluding Pokemon tools and stadiums, prevent all effects of that card done to this Pokemon. What this means is that this Pokemon is on the bench and is ungustable. Theoretically, what you can do is you can just pile energy on it and then Thorton this into a Moltres, which I don't think is bad in this specific deck. I don't have this Regirock, so I use the other one. If you want to use this in this deck, I think it's actually a way better use case than the other deck. The other deck, I would 100% use the other Regirock, because this Regirock right here KOs an Arceus V-Star, which is very important for an attacking Regi deck. You want that KO on the Arceus V-Star. In this specific deck, you could definitely make an argument for this, and I would 100% accept it. Like, this card is probably better in this deck. I just don't have it. Landmaker, it puts 2 Stadium from your Scrabble into your hand, also pretty good in this niche case where you want to get Stadiums back. Stone Edge is terrible, don't use it. It's mainly for the Barrier and the Landmaker. Like I said, I don't have it, so I use this Regirock. That's what we're working with. If you want to use that one, it's probably better in this deck. One copy of Registeel here, the Regigate ability attack again, same one as Regirock. Search your deck for a basic and put it onto your bench. Helps get set up if need be. And then Heavy Slam does 220, does 50 less for each colorless in your opponent's active retreat cost. The other Registeel that people like quite a bit is this one right here. But speaking of Registeels, I love Registeel EX, my boy. This Registeel, though, takes 20 less from attacks, which is kind of decent, and then does 120 to your opponent's active Pokemon with an ability. Actually not a bad card in the Sun and Moon to Lost Thunder format that I like playing, but in this deck specifically, and actually all Regi decks, I'm just not a big fan of this card. And the reason being is that it does have its niche. It hits 220, or 240, my bad, against a weak Pokemon, and technically has 10 more HP because of the exoskeleton. What I don't like is that Regigate is a great attack for helping these decks set up, and Heavy Slam is sneakily good. In Standard, not so much. In Expanded, Heavy Slam hits 220 against anything with a Float Stone on, which is actually very strong. I will always advocate for this Registeel over the other one. Not art-wise, this art is god-awful, but this art's pretty good. I like this one. if you want to use that one, it's up to you. I'm getting really wordy on these Regi choices because I have a lot of opinions on Regis. Don't use the Evolving Skies one in this deck at all for this Regidrago. We'll do that since we're debating Regis. This card sucks. Don't use it in like any Regi deck ever. You're welcome. Alright, yeah, we're done with Regis. Done with the Regi talk. Don't play any other Regigigas. That is not a choice. One copy of Dedenne with the Day-Day Change ability. When you play this Pokemon from your hand into your bench, you may discard your hand and then draw 6 cards. Great consistency option. We can actually use the attacks, so we'll talk about them. 1 Lightning, 1 Colorless, 50, terrible. 1 Lightning, 1 Colorless, 50, and Paralysis is not actually bad. Clear a liability from your field. Your opponent's paralyzed, and then you put this Pokemon all cards stashed in your hand. So you paralyze them, you get a turn, and then this Pokemon comes to your hand. It's actually not bad. I've used it quite a few times. Crobat is also usable. Dark Asset. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to your bench, draw cards until you have 6 in hand, and then Dark, Colorless, 70, Poison. You don't want to be using Venomous Fang, but it's for the draw of Dark Asset. And like I said, you have Sky Field in play, so you can play more than your Regigigas line in play. You want to be very careful with bench liabilities in this deck. That's why you won't see a Tapu Lele in this deck like I have in the other Regigigas deck, is because in the other Regigigas deck, I can have all 6 Regis in play and play all 3 bench liabilities, Dedenne, Crobat, and Tapu Lele. This deck can't do that. Obviously, the other deck also has Yveltal, but that's more of a Thorton card than a bench liability, so keep that in mind. That's why this deck is a little bit less consistent sometimes, but you know, it's a mill deck. Get what you get. Professor Juniper, discard your hand, draw 7. Most consistent card ever printed, play 4. It's very good. We have 1 copy of N. Each player shuffles his or her hand in his or her deck, then draws a card for each of his or her remaining prize cards. I hate this card because it keeps screwing me over recently. I keep ending my opponent to 2 or 1 cards and it does nothing. That was started by my, my partner, Ant-Man, who you'll see in like all the tabletop videos where I end him to 3, and he got everything he wanted. Ever since then, ends have just given me repeatedly bad luck. But in this deck, it's quite good because you're not taking prizes if your mill game plan is going off, so you can always go to 6 cards while your opponent's getting a limited hand size. 1 copy of Thorton. Choose a basic one in your discard pile and switch it with one of your basic one in play, and then all attached cards, special conditions, turns in play, and any other effects remain on the new Pokemon. So what you can do with this, this used to be a Ninja Boy, but obviously Thorton is generally better here, is because it acts as another Pokemon recovery option. But if I have, let's just say, if I don't have a Moltres in play, but I have a full Regi line and maybe like a Day-Day or a Crobat in play, I could say, hey, let's get Day-Day or Crobat out of play, get a Moltres in play, and then like all attached energies, if there's any, we'll go to that. Do be careful because there is Burning Energy in this deck. It discards itself if it's not attached to a fire, so don't charge up a Pokemon with Burning Energy thinking you can Thorton into Moltres and then they discard themselves before you get to Thorton. Be careful with that, because you can actually attach them with the ability. They will just attach and then discard themselves if it's not a fire type. 1 copy of Teammates here. Only played if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Search your deck for up to 2 cards, put them into your hand. So this allows you to get a good consistency option. You're going to be getting knocked out quite a bit, so might as well take advantage of it, right? Love Teammates. Great off of Versus Seeker as well, allowing you to recover it. Search any 2 cards you want at almost any point in the game. 4 copies of Quick Ball. Here is the most consistent item ball search we have. Discard another card from your hand, then search your deck for a basic, reveal it and put it into your hand. You want to use Quick Ball over something like Nest Ball because you have these play down abilities in here with Crobat and Dedenne. Sometimes you also just want to thin for a Juniper. Thinning out something like an extra Regigigas is pretty good. You do see that we played a 3 Regigigas in here because sometimes we can get multiple Ancient Wisdoms off in a turn due to the way this deck plays, and sometimes that's very desirable to get like 6 separate attachments to Moltres. We have 1 copy of Ultra Ball. Discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for a Pokemon, reveal it, put it into your hand. A little bit more hard to play in this deck than the other deck because you're not as focused on discarding as early on as the other deck is. However, you do still have to play it. You want that 5th search option, and it allows you to get everything in the deck, which is quite good. Quick Ball also does that, but Ultra Ball is still pretty good. You want a 5th search option. 3 copies of Hisuian Ball. Look at your face down prize, reveal a basic one you find there, put it into your hand, and then shuffle Hisuian Ball into its place into the prizes. So obviously we have a bunch of 1-ofs here. You don't want to prize them. You don't want to prize Moltres either. You want your Moltres out, you want your Regis out, and occasionally you're going to use it to get a draw piece, that way you can stay in the game. So pretty good. 1 copy of VIP Pass. You can only use it during your first turn, search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon and put them on your bench. This is something that could definitely be argued with. If you think you want to just go full VIP Pass in this deck and just go for the turn 1 mill every game, turn 1 going second rather, then, you know, be my guest. I just don't like VIP Pass because it just clunks your deck up in the late game with this deck. And this deck really suffers from its inconsistencies when you have pieces getting in the way. It's already not a super hyper consistent deck. It doesn't really have a built-in draw engine outside of these 2 basic draw Pokemon and supporters. So be careful if you do. But perfectly welcome to. My deck lists are never perfect. Besides, I will argue to the death about some of my lists, but this one is, like, not perfect. This one is just my preferences. 4 copies of Stretcher, put a Pokemon from Disc Battle into your hand, or shuffle 3 Pokemon from Disc Battle into your deck. Absolutely necessary to play 4. Do not play less than 4. Believe me, I've tested this to ground it back on my regular Regi list. You need 4. Thorton, I know, acts as a semi-recovery card in a way in certain situations. You still need 4. Rescue Stretcher is great. Good card. Battle Compressor, search your deck for up to 3 cards and discard them. Shuffle your deck afterward. You want to get those energies in the discard pile early. If you're going to be Junipering away your hand, you can pair down a Pokemon with the Battle Compressor and then Rescue Stretcher at backup and then discard your hand and get some value out of the Stretcher and extra value out of the Compressor. There's a lot you can do. Putting down a supporter for Versus Seeker. Battle Compressor is great. 3 copies works pretty well. 1 copy of Scoop Up Net. Put one of your Pokemon that's not a VRGX into your hand. Yeah, I'm about to say, where's Computer Search? That's supposed to be right there, because I was going to talk about that next. And what this is for is that you don't want your opponent to lock you in any specific matchup. This one, more than the other Regigigas deck, it can be a problem if you put 2 Moltres into play and then you're not able to get a Sky Field out, because you don't want to be discarding the Moltres from play off like a Juniper if you have 2 in your hand. You're going to probably end up playing both to the bench in a ideal scenario, or rather, less than ideal, but you kind of have to. So you want to put them to the bench, and then you want to be able to not get punished for that, theoretically, if you get into the next hand and you don't find a Sky Field, and now you can't use your Regis. So that is why Scoop Up Net is here. You can play Scoop Up Cyclone over Computer Search if you want. It's an option. 1 copy of Computer Search, discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for a card, and put it into your hand. This could be argued for Scoop Up Cyclone. Like I said before, Scoop Up Cyclone, for those who do not know, just allows you to pick up any Pokemon and all cards attached to it. There's no stipulations. You can pick up the Dedenne or Crobat if you want as well. This could also be argued into Life Dew, which Life Dew is a card that just makes you take 1 less prize, and because this deck just needs turns to mill, sometimes that's all you need. Realistically, this deck's going to start running out of resources by the time your opponent's taken their 6 prizes, so I haven't found it really necessary. I just like the general consistency of Computer Search in this deck. I just want to find my pieces when I want them, so I can get the combo off every single turn. 2 copies of Counter Catcher. You can only play it if you're behind on prizes. Switch one of your opponent's bench with their active, so just a free gust. You'll see this deck doesn't play Guzma, that's why. You have Counter Catcher, and you're going to usually be behind on prizes. So what you're going to do is, being behind on prizes, potentially end your opponent down to a low hand size and Counter Catcher in the same turn to potentially get an extra turn of Gust off with Moltres and escape a hopeful attack. No guarantee it's going to work, but it's there as an option. And you don't play the Guzma, so you might as well play some Gusting to give you a better chance. 3 copies of VS Seeker. Put a supporter card from your battle into your hand. Allows you to just get back any of these great supporters that you need. You're going to need lots of these supporters in a game, especially Teammates, Thorton, and N. 4 Junipers is usually fine, but sometimes you also need to pair them off of the Battle Compressor, so there's great synergy with all of these cards, and you need to reuse some of these cards more than once. So, Burst Seeker is great. 3 copies works pretty well. You could argue for, I think 3 is fine. 3 copies of Float Stone. The Pokemon this card is attached to has no retreat. Same count I play in the other Regi deck. You just really want your Pokemon to have free retreat at all time. You need to be able to pivot into your next Moltres, and you get benefits off of having it on a Regice or Regidrago, having them in the active position to use their ability. Always strong. So those are usually the ones you want to be Float Stoning, unless you start one of the other undesirable pieces, like a Regigigas, Drago, Rock, or Regieleki. We have 3 copies of Sky Field. Each player can have 8 Pokemon in his or her bench, and obviously when it leaves play, you gotta discard them. So this is just because we're playing an expanded Regi deck, so we take advantage of the best card in expanded Regi, which is Sky Field. We want to be able to have a Regi combo in play, which would usually take your entire field, but now we get 3 more spots for your Dedes, your Crobats, your Moltres. In the other deck, you know, you got your Veltal and Lele and all that fun stuff too. Check out my other Regi video if you like Regigigas decks. So we're going to get to the energy here. The energy is unique, obviously, because this is a Regi deck. However, because this is a Moltres deck, not entirely just Regi, I will stress one thing. Keep 2 Aurora Energies, no matter what. Keep 2 Aurora Energies in the deck. Or I guess 2 Prisms, but I like Aurora in here as well. I prefer Aurora in this one because you need to be able to draw out of it. If you play Prism in here, that's fine as well. I just like Aurora better in this specific deck. We play 4 Burning. This can only be attached to a Fire Pokemon. If this is discarded from an attack from a Fire Pokemon this card is attached to, attach this card from your discard pile to that Pokemon after attacking. And then obviously it can't be attached to anything other than a Fire Pokemon, so watch that bottom line right there. Don't attach it to a non-Fire Pokemon. Even though it looks like you can with an Ancient Wisdom, it will discard itself. What this means is that if you do potentially survive an attack with this Moltres, the energies after you top burner, all of the burning energies you discarded will just come right back. So if you survive an attack, then you'll get to get extra attachments the next turn. It's not typically too relevant on non-Counter Catcher turns, but sometimes you can get it to go off, and it's lovely when it does. I've milled like nice 10 cards after getting some burning energies and living a turn with a Moltres, which feels great. 4 copies of Counter Energy. Provides 2 of any energy if you're behind on prizes, as long as it's not attached to GX or EX. Just keep in mind it cannot be attached to Dedenne and count as 2 energy. However, you can attach it to Dedenne and then Thorton it into a Moltres. And what this means is that if I have 3 Counter Energies on Moltres, let's see, you use 1 Ancient Wisdom ability from the Regigigas, then you're going to have 6 mills off of Top Burner. And that's your general goal each turn. You can get more, though, obviously, with multiple Regigigas. I forgot to mention that. Another use of Scoop Up Net. You can use a Regigigas ability twice. If you just pick it up, put it back down, Ancient Wisdom again, there's potentially 8 mills off of that, because you get your 6 off of Counter Energy, and then you get, actually it'd be 10. You get another Counter Energy that's 8, and then you have to move to a different energy, so it'd be like 2 burning, and that'd be 10. So 4 copies of Counter Energy, absolutely great. Lifeblood of this deck. Do not change the 4 Counter, do not change the 2 Aurora. If you don't like burning as much, you can change this to Prism if you want. If you don't like burning too much, you could switch it out for something else. The reason I play Aurora in this deck, because this deck needs to draw, and what this does right here is this allows you to pare down your hand more for drawing off of Crobat and Regidrago. This deck really needs to get going now, whereas the other Regi deck can sit back for a turn to set up if need be. So that's why I play Prism Energy. Aurora Energy just counts as any energy, but you have to discard a card when you attach it. Prism Energy counts as any energy attached to a basic Pokemon, so it works for everything in this deck. So like I said, if you want to play Prism Energy, great. It's kind of a rule I kind of thought about when I was making this deck. I thought back to some players from 2008, and in that format there was 2 supporter cards. There was Celio's Network, which just allowed you to search for any Pokemon that's not an EX, which most decks were not playing EXs by that point. And there was Bebe's Search. Let me find that for you. And Bebe's Search, you have to choose a card from your hand and put it on top of your deck and then search your deck for a Pokemon. So theoretically, Bebe's Search seems like automatically the worst card, or the worst card, because Celio's, you don't have to put a card back into your deck. However, because of the draw engine at the time that allowed you to draw until you have so many cards in your hand, that being played all the time, now we have Crobat and Regidrago in this deck, it actually nets you more cards that way, so it's almost better to play higher counts of Bebe in the decks that did have that draw engines. Obviously, in the other Regi deck, we're not as worried about drawing as fast. In this deck, we really need to, so I play 2 Aurora. I tested it over Prism. I like it over Prism. If you think Prism's better, play Prism. If you want to switch around these energy counts at all, like if you think you only need potentially like 3 burnings or even 2 burnings, I could see, because if you use 2 Ancient Wisdoms, you can do all 4 Counter Energy and 2 burning, then you can do that. I would not go below this amount of Aurora / Prism / Rainbow, whatever you would decide to use, because what this allows you to do is still play the Regi game, because like I said, if your mill strategy fails early on, you're going to know, and you're going to then switch gears into just being a poor man's Regigigas deck, because you can still use these Aurora Energies and even Counter Energies if you're buying on prizes to attack with all of your Regigigas friends. So that's why another reason if you want to still keep like these Regirock, even though the other one might be better. I like this Regieleki better for attacking as well. Don't play the other Regidrago. Don't play the other Regice. And don't play the other Registeel. But, you know, like I said, milk strategy fails, you got a plan B right there. That's what's a lot of fun about this deck. There's a lot of ways to play this Moltres, and there's even more ways to play Regigigas. I have plenty of awesome Regigigas ideas coming soon, so if you want to see more Regigigas videos, stay tuned. Probably in the next few months we'll cover some other Regigigas ideas. One of my favorite cards released, probably one of my favorite mechanically in this entire era, so I love Regigigas. One of my favorite Pokemon, one of my favorite cards of this era. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other expanded deck profiles. Sorry this one went on a little long. There's a lot of wordiness to get through here. And yeah, thanks for